Ghetto. It's a word that immediately transports you. In English, we associate it with an impoverished, unforgiving neighborhood, and although that definition is not far off, its origin is actually Italian. Ghetto is a word that literally means Jewish neighborhood. Just think of where else you see Ghe, ge, like in spaghetti. This word was first put into use to describe the Jewish area in Venice as early as 1516, and it designated where Jews were segregated up until the 19th century in some places. Almost every major Italian city has a ghetto, and unfortunately, Rome is no different. Right in the middle of the city, a couple of meters under river level, the tiny Roman ghetto now charms all who visits it with its narrow streets and thriving community. My favorite way to enter is by walking through the charming Isola Tiberina, a small island in the middle of the river, mostly inhabited by the local hospital, with a couple of restaurants, a gelato shop, and a church, of course. Crossing the oldest bridge in Rome, complete with sculptures of the faces of god of bridges Janus, you can have a moment of quiet away from the noise of the city and enter into this unique neighborhood. Rambling through the ghetto evokes a bittersweet sentiment, however, as its inherent beauty and culture gives such a feeling of joy and tranquility when we know its violent past still lingers in the memories of our elders. You'll find only family-owned shops here, no big brand names watering down the charm. There's always someone trying to hustle you into their restaurant with their original recipes, or with a wave from Nonna cooking in the back, because hey, this is still Rome. Some of the most beautiful ruins live here, like the Teatro Marcello, planned by Julius Caesar and built by Emperor Augustus, which served as the architectural inspiration for the Colosseum just around the corner. Once even smaller than it is now, this area wasn't always a place to stroll through for amazing artichokes and pastries, or to watch people passing by while drinking a spritz, being serenaded by street performers and their accordions. On every corner and in the brass cobblestones on every street, its painful history can be read and remembered. Rome has the oldest continuous settlement of Jews in the world, outside of Israel, where the first record of the community is dated back to the 2nd century BC. But then, after centuries of aggression, Pope Paul IV ordered for all the Jews in Rome to relocate inside the ghetto in 1555 and charged their community with the costs of putting up the walls. This part of the city was walled off until 1888, where the gates would be closed from sundown to sunrise to prevent any intermingling. The residents inside were seen as inferiors, forced to wear yellow identifying marking to signify their religion when they left, having few rights, and only being allowed to have unskilled jobs like pawnbrokers, fishmongers, or rag and cloth traders. Their community was often flooded by the wild Tiber River, and overcrowding and poor health were serious issues for centuries. There was a brief period of relative harmony when the Jewish people were finally granted citizenship in 1870 during the unification of Italy. Then World War II began, and in Rome alone, 1,023 Jews were captured, and only 16 returned. These brass cobblestones I mentioned earlier, called stumbling stones or pietre d'inciampo, are the work of Berlin artist Günther Demnig. He has gone around Europe writing the names, birth dates, concentration camps, and death dates in front of the homes of the people who were snatched away, memorializing them in the brass that glitters along the streets. And yet, somehow, through all the hardship and violence that came with the prejudice against them, the Roman ghetto still thrived and developed its own culture, dialect, and cuisine, which is still present and celebrated today. Judeo-Romanesco blends the Roman dialect with Hebrew words, giving the residents a unique sound that their isolation preserved. The synagogue, normally a very demure and reserved structure in terms of embellishment, is an exciting and lavish work of art built at the turn of the 20th century after the oppressive walls had been torn down. The only square dome in Rome The Great Synagogue can be recognized from miles away and at a number of different vantage points, easily standing out in a city that's known for its skyline. Their cuisine is most famous for the delectable fried artichokes, fried fish called bacala, and traditional Roman pastas, but by keeping kosher with the use of dried beef instead of pork. When here, you have to stop and admire the iconic Fontana delle Tartarughe, the turtle fountain, which was designed by the great Giacomo della Porta and originally was meant to have a different home. But Muzio Mattei, a prominent nobleman and one of the few Catholic residents inside the ghetto, decided it should be in front of his property instead. Now, with fresh water directly inside the walls, his square, Piazza Mattei, became the nucleus for all life in the ghetto, and this lovely fountain serves as the trademark for the neighborhood. Remnants of the walls can still be seen, and names of the victims can still be read. But this community has never fallen, has never faltered in their beliefs, and has always joined together to celebrate and create new versions of themselves. The ghetto, with its dark and difficult past, will continue to rise above and be one of the most beautiful and particular areas in Rome and throughout all of Italy.